Hi, I'm George Crump, Chief Marketing Officer with VergeIO. Today I'm at the Topgolf Sim Lab, and I'm here to talk to some IT folks at Topgolf. They've recently selected VergeIO as their infrastructure software platform of choice. So I encourage you guys to ask a lot of questions. These are guys that are living it day in, day out. I don't know what we'll be able to get a lot of golfing tips, but mostly infrastructure tips, I think, is the safe thing. So let me introduce the team here. First is Scott Forehand. Scott, come on over. Hey, George, how you doing? Good to see you. And then also Jason Sova. Jason, thanks for joining us, sir. Good to see you. All right. Well, before we jump in, give them a little bit of background on yourself, what you do at Topgolf.
Yeah, so Scott Forehand, I joined Topgolf in 2018. I started out as infrastructure engineer and moved into architecture and then into leadership. My background is mostly virtualization storage. I couldn't be more privileged to be here. So. Jason Sova, I'm the architect for enterprise infrastructure. I've been with the company since 2019. Started as a senior infrastructure engineer and then moved up to the pretty much responsible for all technology and home office needs.
Awesome. Okay, so Scott, just at a high level, like in one sentence, what functions or what does IT do for Topgolf?
Oh, everything. So Topgolf is a technology company that masquerades as a sports and entertainment outfit. Everything that we do is technology driven. Like I said,
and as I mentioned, we're in the sim lab here. What is it? I think you mentioned you guys were doing a hackathon or something here.
Yeah.
A while ago.
Yeah. Well, about a month ago or so. About a month ago, we were working on some new game designs. So we got everybody together in the lab. So these are like our demo lab. This is our sports center for our venue business. So we have these 2 hitting days here where we can launch our games, we can test stuff out, give us a spot where we can really push the envelope without impacting it.
Yeah, but this is going to get me a lot of trouble because now all the guys are going to want this for their demo labs. So
it's not ready for market yet.
All right. So obviously, Scott, we're here because we've had some struggles with VMware, your former infrastructure software. Take me through that journey, those initial days of, did it happen as the acquisition happened? Maybe a little before? What did that look like?
It really did kick off when the acquisition happened. We were having some trouble with Broadcom's changing of the game every 5 minutes. It felt like. And really, when we started to dig into it, the cost wasn't tenable. The fact that everything was changing every 5 minutes. We were in the midst of trying to sign an ELA agreement with Broadcom and with VMware at the time of the acquisition. And Broadcom kind of changed that a couple of times and ended up trying to push us to go through Dell a couple of times. And it felt like it never really was going to get off the ground. So we knew we had to start looking at new solutions. And, the team started to put together, I think we looked at 14 different solutions. Pretty much anybody that was in the market, even rolling our own, something like DBM and stuff. We did the whole gamut. Yeah, so we started to pour through a bunch of different solutions. Okay. Obviously, Verge was one of them, right? And it's been difficult to break.
Well, that's good. Let's not do it today. So I remember early on when we were talking, you were looking at stuff like a 400% price increase and things like that. So I think that probably would be like half of your IT budget anyway, right? I mean, that kind of increase, right?
Yeah, and at that point in the year, we'd also already locked in our budgets for the year. So it became a really hard story to tell for us. And we just kind of had to bite the bullet. And thankfully, Broadcom did come to the table and give us a decent price. And we can match what we had before, but it's still exponentially more than what the business has to spend. So, we needed a better partner.
Jason, what were some of the must-haves? You grabbed this list of 12, 14 different vendors, right? What were some of the things like I gotta make sure it can do X, Y, and Z? What would you say are like the top 3?
A lot of our top things was around stability. So we're a fairly lean shop. We have a lot of venues. Every one of our venues is its own little isolated base. Call them their little micro mini city. So for me, our big thing was stability and performance. Right, we have a limited number of people that can support and a very large footprint, so we need to be able to have everything up. We're coming from a VxRail environment, so the hyperconverged was a big part of it. Having vSAN, we weren't looking to go and purchase a bunch of storage. Keep everything isolated from the same stack. And then also the ability of the programmatically manage. So because we are such a small shop, we're trying to do everything possible through code.
Yeah.
My general rule of thumb is if a finger has to touch a keyboard or a mouse, then that's a fault. That's a mistake.
Right.
You want the robots to do well. And we were able to accomplish that for the most part with Verge. So right now we have it to the point where once the base OS is installed, which we're also looking to automate down the road with something like Cloud in. Everything after the base OS install right now, we have running through some sort of CI/CD pipeline from issuing the certs to configuring the cluster, deploying workloads, and then also the maintenance down the road. Like when certs come up for renewal, it's simplified through code. That was a huge win for us. We have been trying to do that for years with our VMware environment. But the ability to know that if I set it up like this today, it's going to be like that a month from now. Right? There was a lot of configuration drift just within, and a lot of like services. Oh, well, we got to go restart the service to be able to make this work. But where we just needed to work all the time.
Well, and Scott, one of the things you had said that I recall early on was you needed each of these venues to basically be standalone.
Yeah.
And everything got cut. You still, because like if people are buying beer, yeah, you don't want to make them mad. Exactly. Can't affect the experience. And what are the technologies you guys see?
So with VxRail VMware, we were running honestly, we got 4.69 develop time. So that was kind of our basic. We haven't had a single bit of downtime in the venues we've been building version.
So it's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
it's been running solid
with no issues since it's
we have our venue we deployed 8-9 months ago. It was our first kind of our demo test venue. And it's been solid. And the only time it's ever gone down is because of environmental issues. And like, oh, we have power issues, full power grid or something like that. But it's never been doing the software or even the hardware. Like, one of the things that this has allowed us to do is move from that highly customized VxRail platform into consumer grade power range shelf commodity hardware. Right. So that's really lead times have gone down, hardware costs have gone down. And it's just simpler, you know, have all the extra complexities and the extra.
Sure. So the got questions flying in, keep them coming. This is great. So beyond price, what would you guys say your number one reason you selected VergeIO? I actually had that question later, but since you asked it, we're going to go right.
For me, it's all about partnership.
Okay.
With Verge and the team there, they're very hungry to help. They're not. It's for me, it personally feels like they're not out to sell a product. They're out to help us be successful. And that is huge for me. In fact, we're a very lean shop. We're a pretty small group, so having that relationship and having that partnership that we can reach out and lean on when we need it, so forth, I think having responsiveness is just absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. How about Breeze?
Well, it was the same, but since I can't say that, I'm gonna say simplicity. So vSphere is incredibly complex. It has been a product that's been around for ages, and they kind of built a bunch of stuff on. Everything is built from the ground up in Verge to be as simple as an image as possible. And it works so well at the edge, and it works at the data center just as well. Right. So I'm gonna go with simplicity.
And was that a like, because I've seen that there are some of our, I guess, competitors that really focus on the edge. And my concern there about is, you know, not to put in charge of IT. I wouldn't want to run something at the edge and then have to run something, you know, enterprise class at the data center. Is that something you were kind of thinking about as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That was another big functionality that was really big for us with Verge was dependency and the sites. So with our older environment, every venue had its own vCenter, it was its own cluster. So we were managing under an independent vCenter. With Verge, we've been able to leverage dependency and the sites. So now we've basically set it up where we have regional tenants, the data center, and then the sites or the venues within that region talk back to that tenant. So it can effectively give us a single pane of glass. Well, 3 panes of glass, 1 per region.
Right.
But now if I want to see what's happening in my East Coast venues, I have 1 place to put.
Right.
Whereas before, I got, pulling a number, but like I said, I had 20 venues in the East Coast, means I have to log into 20 different centers to see what's going on. Right? So that was huge for us.
Yeah, that in itself.
And then we're also using that tenancy for our backup, right? So we have the cloud snapshot at venue, and then we're using that tenant data center along the site to replicate that snapshot data back. So we have an offset of backups, and that's all handled natively within Verge now. That's going to be a big simplicity for us.
So, and the simplicity topic ties into the next question again, but just keep them coming, guys. It's really good. Talk about the learning curve. We'll get the functional migration here. The learning curve, because you guys have, I'm sure, been running VMware probably for over a decade, right?
So I built my career on VMware. I've got 25, 30 years of VMware. So, and moving to Verge, there was some hiccups, just understanding the way the philosophy changed.
Sure.
But for the most part, it was fairly straightforward. I mean, there were a few things, but we had our SE on who was very familiar with it. So I'd be like, I don't understand this. And he's like, oh, that's distributed switching, right? You give me the VMware equivalent of it. I'm like, oh, okay. All the pieces just fit together. Everything worked out now. But for the most part, very straightforward. And obviously, you have your terminology. It's really all about where to find your click. Yeah, the interface. And that's a learning curve, even if it's in the VMware enterprise. So
Yeah, next version of the product or whatever. Right?
exactly. Like our support ops guides, we have a couple of venues out in the field, and we have a lot of POC currently working on ramping up and getting deployments out. So we haven't really gone through and done the official training with them. They've just been kind of poking around in our lab environments while we get everything ready to go, and then we're going to sit them down to do official training. But just by giving them like the lab to go and poke through, they've pretty much got to figure it out on their own just by looking in.
And are you using the tendency to kind of create those labs as well?
Yeah, so we're doing nested deployments inside one of our cluster labs, so they can spin them up and tear them down and break them, and they don't impact the underlying hardware.
Yeah, I always love that one of the kind of things you probably don't, or a little guilty of not talking about the sort of the training aspect. You can literally give a guy his own data center and he can destroy it. It won't hurt him. So that's cool. What were some of the things, going back to kind of that selection process, what were some of the reasons you knocked out, you don't necessarily have to say names, but knocked out some of the candidates off the list? Maybe didn't even make it to testing, whatever.
I mean, it rains, right? We looked at 14 different products. Some of them weren't even to market yet. So, there was one that was, I think it's called Canonical Cloud or something like that. That was effectively a white paper. Yeah, it was all conceptual, right? They were working to put it together. But it wasn't quite there yet. And it was, Azure Stack and AWS Outpost and all kinds of stuff that we were trying to see what fit. So we looked at a ton of different products, some of which were just too big for our environment, right? You look at OpenStack. Yeah, running a full OpenStack environment, the venue was just, no. Yeah. I mean, it's Amazon in the box, and we don't need, right? We need a very small subset of that that's targeted towards our edge deployments and targeted towards the things that we need to do with data center, but we didn't want to make it impossible to handle, right? So, a bunch of those different products kind of fell off pretty early. Some of them purely in cost decisions, some of them in management, right there. Some of them couldn't be easily automated, and we knew that was a big part of what we wanted to do. So, it really varied solution to solution. The only one that checked every box was.
So another question that came in kind of ties into this. why not just use the cloud? And I think I know the answer to that, but I'll let you guys.
So we have to maintain the ability to run a venue without it. So you think a lot of our venues, when we build a venue, we're usually the first real establishment to go into that location.
Right.
And then we're the anchor that people build. So, we build a venue and then for the next 4 years, basically that area is under construction. You get fiber cuts, you get power issue, all kinds of stuff, right? And we can't afford to have an internet outage take our entire venue.
Right.
So we run as much as we possibly can local in the venue. So that if we were to, heaven forbid, have that internet cut or fiber cut or whatever, we can at least still maintain basic functionality. So there's that. Then there's also the cloud, we're paying by hour. Put it on-prem, pay a one-time CapEx plus your licensing costs, and then you just do go. Right? And that's a set cost. But so those are the two big things.
Well, and I can personally attest to the buildup you guys see, because you guys know I'm from Fort Worth. They put it so that, like, when it was going in, I'm like, what are you thinking? There's nothing here. You get rats, right? And so, and there was a brewery, which is like a pretty decent brewery, but that's why I can't get that thing. There you go. Yeah. And so, and then I don't know, within 6 months afterward, the place is like a whole different area of town. Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, the impact of that happens everywhere we go. Yeah. So okay, let's kind of move. Got a lot of questions coming in on the migration process and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about what that was like. You got a funny story about this? We'll say that to the end. But just talk about just maybe in your testing when you're doing migrations, how does that work?
Oh, I think I'm actually going through one right now. So okay. So basically what we do is we would stand up Verge cluster next to the current hardware stack. And then we leverage Verge's backup in EDR functionality. So that connects into our vCenter. And then it basically just backs up all of our VMs from vCenter, like Rubric or all the other backup. They take a snapshot, they'll suck it in. And then when you do the restore, you have the option of restoring it back to vCenter or importing it in. So that's effectively what I bring in 40 or 50 VMs we have in the venue. And then I just say, restore them, but put them over here on Verge instead. The process is very straightforward and painless. Our Linux stuff, it's just move it over, change it from the VMware hardware to the Verge-io stuff. Click go. Windows, a little bit more complicated because you have drivers. That's not a Verge thing or a VMware thing. That's strictly a Windows. Change your drivers. But like we're doing a venue, we do a venue night. So we go in, whatever venue open.
Now tell the story. So you're setting this a site up.
So we're doing one of our local venues here in Dallas. And we went out like the Monday morning and we deployed the Verge cluster. And then we set up the backup and we left for the day. Right? We let it run throughout the day, back up 6 terabytes of the data. So it brings it all into Verge. And then that night, okay, we're going to do the cuddle. So we power down everything off the VX rail, power everything up on Verge. We go through and we do some validation testing. Like, okay, everything's good, but I'm going to go out to the venue in the morning just to do one last go through, next walk the T-line, make sure everything's 1,000% good. We get out to the venue, and I'm sitting there, doing my checks, and the facilities manager comes over. He's like, "Oh, Jason, what are you doing out here today?" I'm like, "Oh, we did your cutover last night." The cutover, yeah, we basically moved everything off of your existing hardware and moved it over to the hard train. And he's like, "Oh, you did that last night?" Like, "Yeah, I'm just finishing up now." He's like, "The board of directors was coming on site today to do a demo, right?" I'm like, "No." So, I think it was fun.
That's what we call acid test right there.
Yeah.
Nobody tells us anything.
It just worked. So it was great, and that's the cluster that's been running. I think the last I checked, there was like 200 and some days of uptime without so much of the hiccup.
Yeah.
We found out they were going to be there 10 minutes before they started showing up.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's like an IT though, right? So question came in along that. So they wanted to know, did you have to use a third party piece of software with all the capability to do the migration building?
All the functionality was built in.
And no extra charge for that, by the way. So, the other question was, interesting way you say it, actually. How is the transition felt? Like, how would it make you feel? I guess. That's not normally a question I would ask.
I've got,
Okay.
refreshing.
Yeah, refresh.
So I have caught myself several times over the course. I was actually going through my email. So we started this adventure in March of 2020. I got the email from the Jaeger giving me the link to download the ice. So it's been over a year. And I have caught myself several times over the course of that year going, why have, I've spent the last 30 years of my career, 25, 30 years doing VMware pretty much exclusively. Right. And I was like, wow, where was this 20 years ago? I was like, what have I been doing? Like actually second guessing my business based on
Yeah.
saying.
I was legitimately upset at myself for not knowing Verge existed prior.
I think that's my fault, though. So, I mean, you're good.
You're good. We're
We
good.
can blame it. That's
Yeah.
fine.
That's what. Let's see, just got some more questions coming in. Oh, some stuff is coming on the Terraform, stuff. So you're talking about automation. I guess I just spoiled alert, you're the Terraform.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you're able to automate and things like that.
So we have several different pieces of our current automation plan. So we're using native APIs to do the pre-configuration. So like setting up certificates, setting up our sites, and dependency of the everything on stuff I talked about previously. And then we hand it off to a Terraform workflow that handles all of our VM deployments. So it'll build up all of our backend services, all gaming environments that we need within the backend. So so Terraform does the VM creation and base configuration. So like our Windows machines, it brings them up, joins into the domain, Linux, that's the same thing. And then from there, we actually hand it off to an Ansible play that'll go through and like promote our domain controllers, configure our DHCP scopes, install the actual applications within Kubernetes and all that stuff. So Terraform basically builds the foundation. And then from there, we have another layer that goes on top, sets up our.
So one of the things you told me about is like, I guess when you lose power, you gotta try to as quickly as possible, break it and shut everything down. What does that process look like for you now?
So
Describe what it was. Yeah, there you go.
So previously, it was basically a Confluence hub. And it gave you all the VMs and a particular order they had to be shut down because of the way the services were. Right. So you would literally log into vCenter and you had to shut everything down
In the right order.
in the right order.
Yeah.
And then once it was shut down, then you would right click on the cluster, go to VxRail and say shut down the Gate0 cluster.
If the XRL manager was working.
It would shut it down, or sometimes you'd have to go in and manually put all the hosting names mode and power the cluster down. Because the VxRail manager would lose its connectivity to vCenter, so it couldn't do that.
So on a good day, let's say, or an average day, how long did that process take? Okay.
Yeah, like that.
And you got a little bit of a clock if you're on power, right?
Yes, so we have an hour, usually about, our UPSs are usually good for about an hour. So, that sometimes come close, but usually we get them down in time. But with Verge, it's so much, so we were able to automate that entire process through the API. So right now, with one of our Verge venues, of course, power outage, they literally go to our Jenkins master server, which is the web page. They click the venue name, and they get a pull down menu. Start it up, or do you want to shut it down? You shut down, click go, and 15, 20 minutes later, it's powered.
But no interaction or anything like that.
No interaction, everything's logged, everything gives you a nice output, for you everything it did. And then when you want to power it back up, you just go back into that website and change the pull down menu from shut down to power up, hit go. And it'll log into the iDRAX, power everything up. And it's actually smart enough where it'll sit and wait. So like when Verge first comes up, you got to wait for the drives to get redundancy and do all this stuff. But we actually wait. We'll ping it via the API. It's okay, now everything's 100%. Now we can bring up our workload. Where with the VxRail is bringing them up. You bring them up and say one of them takes a little longer, they don't come up in the right order. The vSAN would be inaccessible. And then you had to basically power everything down, power it up and try again. And then the vSAN would become available and then take the most out of maintenance flow and stuff. But with the different API functionality of Verge, we can actually check for that as we go and mitigate it as part of it.
That's awesome. That's cool. Well, so I have the opposite problem since I been working with Verge so long. I just assume everybody does this stuff. And so they're like, you know,
Okay, I mean, we had the process automated in VxRail, but then we run into like what we said about how VxRail Manager and vCenter moves, and that would break that last piece. So
that's that important thing.
that's the important piece. That's where it's actually turning.
Right. You couldn't trust them. It would consistently go into a bad state. And you had to be there to validate. Make sure it was still valid. Well, you guys obviously don't have an IT guy at every event.
No, the people, so our facilities teams at the venue are the ones that manage our technology for us. So if you think about it, the guy that's, painting the walls and patching holes and somebody gets a golf ball from a PC tripper off, is the same guy that's helping us rack and stack servers and troubleshoot. So we do everything. It's all remote hands for the most part. Hardware replacements, we don't rely on the venue. We'll have Dell or whoever actually go on site.
So I'm gonna go back to the questions because you guys are asking great questions, by the way. Let's see, I just, this is a great question. So Scott, at what point in the POC process with Verge did you go, I think you could run a Verge? Oh, it's pretty early. I think the only thing that wasn't fully baked at the time was the Terraform provider. And the Verge team worked with Sova here and Rob Lindauer, another guy on my team, to really flesh that out, get it to a point where you can use it to deploy venues. And we didn't have to change a lot of our existing code. So that was a big part of it. So we already had a Terraform process built for VxRail. And what Verge allowed us to do with the provider was we basically just took the provider piece out of VMware, brought the Verge provider in, and all the same workflow worked. Oh, that's awesome. So we didn't have to spend, Rob spent a good amount of time rebuilding that provider. Once we had that built, it was just plug and play with our existing. So I knew this question was going to come. How do you handle backup and DR of your Verge sites? So initially we had I thought it was one of the first people you talked with. Yeah. And you had mentioned, I don't know if we want to say it or not, but you had another backup solution. And I was like, that's going to be tough. and we had some ways to kind of get there, but it's not perfect. And we'll talk about your journey to and what you ended up with from a backup system.
Yeah, so we leverage Blueprint. Topgolf for the web team security. For our entire environment that currently runs on VMware, that's been a story for 5 years, 6 years almost. Yeah. What we found when we started playing around with Verge Labs was it had a lot of the data protection functionality baked in and native stuff. And there wasn't a real need for anything outside of the security side of Blueprint technology. We got the single pane of glass, had a good data center deployment, and it's all the other elements of it. So we just started kind of thinking through what it would look like to replace Rubric with Verge. And there are some challenges, right? Because Verge doesn't have the security side of that built in, but from a replication, from a deduplication perspective, we were actually able to reduce our storage footprint with Verge over Rubric and VxRail. So we still have our 3 sites. You had your local, basically we're leveraging Verge's cloud snapshot. So we have the cloud snapshot on-prem venue, that's the regular payments that replicates back to our data center for our second site. And now we have been replicated back here to our remote our third offsite location. And then looking to possibly move one of those that we apply some later on the other features, right? But I mean, our main thing is we need our local data venue, we need our offsite, we need our third point. I think we've been able to do natively.
That's awesome. So you have fans all the webinars, Scott. So the question for Scott. When is the first, and I know why this question covered it, when is the first VFW Verge.io user
I think I know who that is. I think I know exactly who that is.
TBD, right?
Yeah, TBD. Yeah. Obviously, be my leader, but, who knows what the future holds. You two need to have a conversation after this.
Barely. I know a couple places we could have it. So it works out pretty
Yeah,
well.
there's a few top balls.
Yeah, quite a few.
So a couple of questions have come in on AI. And we've Verge been talking a lot about AI and stuff like that. What do you guys? And I know we're not there yet today, but what do you guys see potentially as something out?
We have a couple of things that we're cooking. Nothing really far enough down the pipe to really talk about, but, with the way we did things in the past, we had with VxRail and Horizon, we ran everything on the VxRail cluster and then presented on. So we have a lot of GPU. We have some ideas. Right now, the plan, I think, is to put GPU in our Verge cluster at the data center and maybe offload some of what we used, like code completion, AI, kind of bring that in-house, get it off the cloud. But then we also have some interesting ideas going forward on how we could directly contribute to the player experience, leveraging AI. And by having the VergeAI solution baked in the cluster, we can post all that locally at the venue. Because once you go out to the SaaS solutions for AI, it gets expensive.
Clearly, then you got token costs.
Yeah. So the idea
And we
was
still got the connectivity issue, right? If people really start liking the AI and it goes away for some reason.
yeah, you got the latency, you got the connectivity, so having that, being able to run locally on the cluster. And have it run relatively natively on the cluster and not have to deploy a bunch of views and stuff in one side. I'm very excited for what's coming down the pipe.
Cool. So let's talk. It's great. I mean, I don't know how to. I don't think I've gotten like 4 of my questions. Talk about. I don't know if you guys have done this yet, but system updates and patching. What did that do?
You click the button and it goes.
Yeah,
For the most part, yeah,
it's painless. It was relatively painless in the in there with VxRail, right? They've done a good job putting composite packs together for that system. But all of that is changing. We were a little apprehensive because we needed more into, the update ecosystem specific to VM and away from what they built with Dell. It was a lot of work to get that where we needed it to be. And it's still not exactly where we needed it to be. We didn't get the ability to migrate GPU, for example, until 3 months ago.
yeah, I think it was a little long that. We were very apprehensive of completing it.
Yeah, and with Verge, one of the first things that we did in the lab was, it was sitting on a cluster that had a GPU. It had no problem migrating any of that. And we didn't understand why a company like VMware couldn't make that work the way that Verge made it when it's seamless.
The upgrade process. It's not. And I love the way that, because it's all Linux based under the hood, so it's all just squash at best houses.
Yeah.
It will revert itself back to something fails.
Yeah.
Literally check for updates, download update, install update, reboot. And then it just goes through and migrates everything and reboots your cluster and gets everything up with 0 downtime. There was actually, I guess, a hot fix released yesterday.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in the lab yesterday. I was like, oh, there's a new one. Didn't reach out to any of the teams that use the cluster. Because it's a lab. I was like, okay, it's a lab, but QA used it today, and some more developers use it. And I was like, you know what? Quit. Just let it do its update. Didn't say anything. Nobody noticed. Nobody complained. It was completely transparent. And at the end of the day, that's what we want.
Oh, yeah, you guys could be bored. I feel like.
We can do cooler stuff.
I don't know the answer to this, so but I'm curious to know. Have you done anything with any of the networking capability of the cloud?
Not yet.
Okay.
So we are looking at separating out some of our workloads into tenants using virtual wires, but that's really as far as it's gone. Our networking at the venue is very simple, very flat. A couple of VLANs for different workloads. That's about it. I know I do have on my to-do list is to sync up our SC with our network architect here and have them kind of sit down and have a meeting of the minds to see where we could leverage that in the future, mainly around like our international business development franchise partner driven. So that could give us some more opportunities there in a way to support our partners. So yeah, we haven't, short answer, no, not really, but we have a lot of interesting things that I'd like to maybe.
So another question is, what effect has it had on your staffing? I think you had mentioned your 3 thin staff. Yeah.
Our team is 5 folks, and only 3 of those are SBDC, right? So, it's really freed up a lot of time for us with the automation. So when rather than to put us in a better spot. And it also impacts our operations, the separate infrastructure operations. It goes through menus day to day. And they haven't had to touch the cluster that runs through.
And if they do, they just use our automated tools, and it's a lot of like, and weapon things.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things is like, that our previous solution was great for the scale we were. As we've now moved into 100 venues and we're looking to continue to grow year over year, it all comes down to simplicity and standardization, right? We don't necessarily want to add more people every time we build. We want to be able to manage things smarter. And that's what we've been able to do. So, I mean, it's not like, oh, we can reduce our headcount because we now have Verge. No, it's like, yeah, we free up cycles. That just means we can be flexible. Right? We can build the next player experience. We can find something cool to do that will impact the venue. So that's the way we look at it. It's not necessarily, oh, we can save money by headcount. No, it frees up resources for efficient and really pushing the experience.
Well, we could, like you said, you're an IT shop masquerading as an entertainment venue, right? So makes sense.
That's exactly it. We've been trying to get back to innovation for 5 years now, but haven't been able to free up the cycles to do it. This will be that for us. It's awesome.
All right, so a question about the Dell servers came up, so I want to talk a couple things there. Let's first talk a little bit about what you replaced. So we've said VxRail a few times now.
Yeah.
What you replaced it with, what that looks like from an economic standpoint, and then also the start of the question, why do you guys keep them?
So Dell's been a pretty big strategic partner with Topgolf. I personally have had other experiences with other partners in previous lives. We always landed back on Dell. Never had a problem with their server platforms. So couldn't be solved pretty quickly. And quite frankly, they're good to us from the pricing. Just I think that's really important too. They're easy to manage. That's something a couple of the other partners struggle with. With VxRail, we try a couple of different models. Most of the time, we landed on a 2E box. Had quite a few GPUs in it. Huge core count because we had to drive our gaming from the VxRail, right? So we were carving, depending on the number of days, say average of 102 virtual desktops in that cluster running free gaming a day. We've optimized our stack in such a way that we've been able to simplify the gaming experience, run all of that inside of Kubernetes. Thank you. And it's really made an impact for what we need to put in the venue, which is going to impact our power profile. It's going to give us more time on EPS. We'll be able to react faster to things that can be AI and the ability to control things for code. So where we had on average 5-node cluster of V670 VxRail with GPU, a huge power profile. Now we're running on 3 nodes of Verge with far reduced storage footprint. Primarily because the utilization is insane. What are we getting right now?
I think last time I checked, it was something like 13 or 15 to 1.
In production. Wow. I think that's really good. Yeah, it honestly it blew our minds. I don't know how you do it, and I don't know that I care so much. Let's keep doing it. So we've been able to reduce the storage footprint, we've been able to reduce chassis, the cost of the venue has exponentially decreased for us, which is incredible because, you know, our previous service stack cost quite a bit of money. And right now with, you know, the Verge licensing and the service stack, we're looking at less than far less. We're 7 years apart. Yeah, it's awesome. It's huge.
So, and here's another question, I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it. Did you have any software that were basically virtual appliances that you moved to worry about migrating over? Yeah. And how it goes though?
Well, some of them we didn't need to take, right? So like, we realize operations, login site, that kind of stuff.
Security stuff, Cisco, that runs in OVAs, and so OVA appliance. Migrating it from our existing VMware environment into Verge was seamless. It was just, it took it like another Linux VM and over. For moving forward with those types of products, we're looking to leverage, they have a AVM appliance, which is basically right. So we're hoping we can just, we're gonna work with that vendor to get that in. Or else we also have other ways around it, we basically leverage, instead of having the appliance live locally at the venue, we can put it other places like our data center. We can do that feature, and as long as we have that failback for using it.
And then on the big real line front, are you using basically our telemetry capabilities to backfill some of that stuff?
So we already have a pretty robust observability platform.
Okay.
And we've been able to hook into the Verge API, to hook into our observability platform to pull all the stats out. That's still a work in progress. We have the basic functionality out there that we would need, you know, up, down, and general SLAs for the venue business, but we're still flushing that in.
Yeah, so interesting side note, and only I would probably care about this. Things like our best attended webinar prior to this one was one we did on observability and automation, Vercom and Prometheus, right? So
Yeah, your Prometheus provider?
yeah,
I've been looking at that, and right now we're focused on getting what we have with the API, seeing if that's.
we in fact deep technical detail. I can tell you that for sure. Okay, now that's great. Let's see, so the hardware footprint, fewer number of servers, I assume smaller physical space itself, right? And performance, I don't know if you guys were necessarily pushing the other box, pushing our box, and making sure it's not lost.
So we don't do a ton of items, right? We don't have a lot of disk movement. But we did put everything on EVO meters, so the performance that's on EVOs there that you need it. We reduced our core count, but they are faster CPU.
Yeah, we were originally we were dual 24 sockets per server across 5 servers. We've now brought that down to dual 64 across 3 servers. But a lot of that too is also we mitigated our virtual desktop, right? We moved those out, we moved the workload directly to the gate panel. But when you see the shot, so a lot of our GPU workload is being moved to standalone hardware. So that's reduced a lot of it on the server side. But we do GPU and all that.
And if you ever get to see these guys have a puzzle look on their face, because I'm smiling at something I should be smiling at, because I'm reading a question. So, and the one that made me smile is a guy that just became a customer, likes what he's seeing so far, but he likes my hat. There's a whole backstory behind the hat, but we'll make sure you get a hat. All right. Anybody that's a customer that's on this webinar, email me, we'll get you a hat. So no problem. So that's pretty funny. I never had a hat competition. There's one. Looks good. And we're not going to sell it to you. We're going to give it to you because you're a customer. So there you go. Because you were saying something very serious, and I'm sitting there trying on the laugh out loud. So let's see, from a, I want to go back just real quickly to the data protection stuff. Yeah. You're mostly doing this with snapshots and replication, I'm assuming.
Yes, cloud snapshot. The other thing I like about the cloud snapshots is not only does it take snapshots of the VM, but also does the management layer. So if you really screw up something in your web UI, you can use a snapshot and solve the settings back as well as your web.
Right.
So yeah, we back that up. we're doing the defaults, the midnight, the hourly, and the noon. And then we just take our midnight and we ship that offsite. And
So, wow, this time just flew by. A couple of kind of final thoughts. So we got a lot of people, got apparently a few Verge customers or recent Verge customers, but guys are kind of going through the process and you guys have gone through for the last year or so. Let's give them some advice. Other than go buy Verge, fine. But give them some advice on how they go through this process.
leverage the team.
Yeah.
Leverage the team. The Verge guys are extremely responsive and they want to help. Leverage the team.
They were incredibly helpful through our POC, even when we had a feature that wasn't quite there, that we needed to be in the platform before we could launch. They were able to take that to the product team and get priority where it needed to be. And, it was really refreshing to partner with those folks as we went through the process.
But, and then, I can't cover them. Any issues dealing with Broadcom as far as when you start shutting licenses down and stuff like that?
No, I mean, we're locked into an ELA with them, so, they have, I don't know, maybe, I don't want to say the word, but, maybe they're knocking on the door at some point just to make things a little harder, but they haven't done that yet, which is great. Hope they don't, because we've had a really long partnership with them, and, there's certainly other opportunities outside of the vSphere environment, but no issues from Broadcom apart from our experience through their process and, then kind of changing their mind every 5 minutes and not there. That's something we really rely on, as we go through the process. So,
They haven't been spiteful or anything. Well, and then we'll say, okay, good luck with that.
definitely,
Yes, that's good.
That's all you can ask for, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, question came in on time. You guys talked about how it's giving you time. We hope to get back to innovation. Yeah. What not to say dollar figure's too hard, but like in terms of hours or something, what do you think that's saving you and going to save you with quite that?
that's a tough question. So,
Yeah.
Jesus, that's why we went to these guys.
Yeah.
Damn it, George.
I know.
Okay, so I did do a little bit of math last week on this, and it's in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 hours a week for our operations team. Is what we estimate we'll be able to save there, which is great because it allows me to focus more on the things that entities need rather than the things that are going down in the hardware environment, right? So, for our team though, I mean, through just the POC and after we made the decision and started to deploy, we've really put the majority of our week towards innovation since making the decision. So, to be honest, I'm going to say 70 to 80% of their time now is focused on the things that we want to do, rather than the things that we have to do to work. So eliminating the firefighting. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. And being able to, like, with our observability platform and with the AI personality of Verge, we're building up a lot of that firefighting directly into our observability platform. So it'll see something and be smart enough to say, hey, kick off this API call into this cluster and it'll fix your issue. So we're looking to fall back a lot of time at that as well. Now we have to be very, very careful about. We don't want it to do something it's not supposed to, but and that's on us from our side. Make sure because Verge will do whatever we tell them.
Right.
Usually tough to do the right thing.
Yeah, you want to make sure like that works out well. All right, well, hey, we're about out of time. You guys, thanks very much again for taking time and for allowing me to kind of get into your sim lab here. We will be doing events around the country at various Topgolf, so stay in touch with your sales team. I'm sure we come to a city near you at some point. We were actually on the phone talking about that yesterday. But for now, I'm George Crump, Chief Marketing Officer with Verge-io. Have a great day. Thank you.